So I think if you just raise your hand, we have microphones, and we'll just point to somebody raising their hand, and they can ask their question. We'll do our best to answer it. We apologize if we don't know the answer. Also, feel free, on our presentation, we had an email and ways to contact us. You could send us comments, and that way, if we need more time to think about a question, or we might be able to answer it later, even if we can't answer it at this moment. So feel free to ask any questions or make any comments, or yeah. So Tanya.
Just a quick question about the mailing list and so on. Do you also have a forum? Oh, sorry. Do you also have a forum where people can subscribe to and see past messages? Because I've been trying to Google for those addresses and they don't seem to appear anywhere yet. Are these public? Can we Twitter about them? I guess you want feedback, right?
Yeah. So I thought it was all set up, but it might not have been completed being set up. But there should be, and if there's not, there will be very shortly the PQC forum with the web page, and all the messages will be archived, so you can see them all.
So the time frame you had is rather long, and I was wondering on some of the things that we have a better understanding of, like the hash-based signatures, would it be possible to move faster on those and maybe do that quicker and then do some of the other types of schemes later on?
Yes, certainly. I think the hash-based signature, that's when we're having discussions at NIST right now, and that very well could be standardized much sooner than waiting until the end of the process. That could happen within a year or two. The IETF's working on it as well. If they come out with something, that would work as well. So, anything else you guys want to add to that?
No.
But so far, I think hash-based signature is the only one that we've considered at this point.
Related question. I understand that you're saying hash-based signatures are more mature and ready for standardization, but if you look at what the users actually need, then somebody who's encrypting data, they don't get anything out of hash-based signatures. And in many cases, that data actually needs to be confidential for longer than the time frame where we're going to have quantum computers. Might it be a good idea to have some preliminary recommendations for those people so that they can choose something and say, okay, we understand this is not going to be the final standard, but it's better than nothing?
So not everyone is bound by NIST standards. We specifically, our standards have to be followed by federal agencies outside of defense. So you can feel free to implement something before we standardize, and we encourage you to do so. And Tanya?
Well, just to continue that previous thought, take, for example, a US government diplomat who needs to encrypt sensitive data where if that information is leaked within some number of years, then that might be quite embarrassing for the United States. And if that information is encrypted, then that should protect it against people eavesdropping. But if it's encrypted using a pre-quantum solution and then the eavesdropper has a quantum computer, then that US diplomat is screwed. So does NIST have any suggestions for what that person should do other than wait, I think, 6 years until, or 6 to 8 years until NIST has its standards in place?
Well, I think we're not foregoing the possibility that we could standardize before the process ends. At this point, I don't think we have any encryption scheme ready to standardize at this point. So if someone submits one and we start looking at it and everyone else looks at it and it looks good, that it could go quicker. Right now, we don't feel that we have one yet.
I think I can add to that. No. Let's go to William down here first. So come back. You've had a chance already.
Hi there. I've got two questions, actually. So one is picking up on Dan's question, and your answer that it's specifically for federal information processing systems. Yeah, so there's been discussion here in Dan's presentation and elsewhere of hybrid methods where you have some kind of approved classical method that's combined with some unauthenticated quantum secure encryption mechanism. And if you look at FITS 140-2, at the moment there are approved key establishment methods which are not quantum secure, but each of which allows for the possibility that additional shared information gets mixed in through the key derivation function. So would NIST consider issuing guidance to the effect that if that additional, I mean, it's implicit, but I think making it explicit would be useful. Would NIST consider issuing guidance to the effect that if that additional shared information has been obtained through some unapproved cryptographic algorithm that's believed to be secure or believed to be post-quantum, that would be acceptable in the FITS 140-2 setting. So in other words, I'm saying do what 140-2 allows you to do already, but just issue guidance saying, look, here's a hack you can do that might help.
So as a mode or with specific primitives in mind?
Not even necessarily as a mode. I mean, the data wouldn't even necessarily need to be exchanged, or the post-quantum algorithm wouldn't even need to be exchanged by the FITS 140 modules. It could be exchanged outside the FITS 140 modules. If it's ephemeral and deleted, that's fine, right? But just to make it clear to people that if you're bound by regulation to use FITS 140 modules, you aren't bound to use crypto that's going to be broken in 15 years' time. You can still have confidentiality over that time scale.
So yeah, my understanding is that is our current interpretation of the FIPS, and we could we'll consider making that more explicit if there's any confusion about that.
Yeah, I think it's also much confusion. I think it's lack of awareness. People just don't know that's possible. I don't want to monopolize the conversation though. So my second question was, a lesson that I think we should learn from conferences like this is not just quantum computers might come along, they might break the algorithm we're currently using at the moment. It's that with very small exceptions, hash-based signatures and full random analysis, with very few exceptions, any system we use could be subject to a clever algorithmic break at some point. And so do you see this as being a single effort to produce a single suite of crypto systems that are going to be recommended and then there won't be more recommendations? Or do you see this more as a rolling, ongoing effort to make sure that we have backup algorithms based on new hard problems in our back pocket in case something new comes along? The correct answer is
we consider it ongoing. Yeah, we consider it ongoing for sure. That's why we, for example, wanted to avoid the word competition because that implies cutoff. You have a winner and that's it. No, if we have applications that seem to require a certain technology but aren't appropriate in another venue, then we want to select something, be able to do work with it, and then move on and select more things in the future.
Okay, so similar direction. So procedural questions, are there going to be like fixed dates where you can submit changes or new proposals? Or is it more like, okay, we collect in batches, but we'll consider whenever something comes in? I mean, it's really nice if you consider everything that comes in. We've been trying to do this with eBets and then Supercop, but it's also quite a drag to, at every moment, get people, you just made a new release and then some stuff comes in. And in the end, we noticed from ourselves that we've been slacking off a little bit. So this is not an opinion of what you should do. It's more a question like, what can we expect?
Yeah, I don't think we've completely determined that yet. So we would welcome suggestions on it, I guess.
I would recommend doing some fixed dates.
Okay.
I mean, frequently enough, like 3 times a year, but just having everyday collection raises expectations. It's pretty hard to handle.
Yeah, we haven't So we haven't talked about how to do that, but yeah, that's reasonable. That's reasonable.
Ilya Bernov from Google. I want to echo the previous comment about combiners for various crypto primitives. It's useful for crypto geology as a whole, and I think NIST will be making useful public service if it comes out with a statement that supports uses of combiners for signatures, for encryption, for key exchange. And my actual question is whether just very recently GCHQ came out with a non-recommendation for quantum key distribution. Is it something that NIST would consider doing, of saying that some possibilities are foreclosed and not advisable? And what's your position on that as a whole?
Well, we have researchers at NIST working on quantum key distribution. Our crypto group isn't currently looking to standardize that technology right now. The other people we have at NIST who are working on that technology, I think, are involved with some standardization efforts. Just our particular group is not. And it is possible that, yeah, during the process we say, yeah, some of these submissions, we don't think these are feasible, so we can narrow our focus, yes.
One question I have is about the types of things you are looking to be submitted. In the AES and the SHA-3 competitions, you had a very good idea about the APIs, block sizes, etc., and you rejected anything which didn't conform to exactly that. Obviously, we're not nearly as mature. What we expect is not nearly as mature. How flexible are you going to be?
Sure. So we're certainly going to be flexible about the size of various parameters and that sort of thing. We are going to specify an API and a security model. That does not necessarily mean that that's the only thing your crypto primitive can do. So you need to tell us how to do something that fits the API, but if you can do additional things, that's fine.
Okay, maybe I'll give you an example. For example, look at the HEMO primitive. It's not really a public key encryption. It's certainly not a signature, but it might be useful in post-quantum world. How does that fit?
That's a good question. Yeah, there's that, and the hash-based signatures that are stateful, are also difficult. Although that we might do early.
That's just too tough a question. Yeah, I don't think we can really give you a good answer for that.
Okay, I have also, because you are talking about the standardization of the primitives, and that's very important. But if you are an industry, then you have to use the primitives in protocols or in systems. And I don't think now in ITF, then the hash-based signatures have been standardized. But are you thinking about talking to other standardization bodies or thinking about how these primitives could be rolled out in a real world? Because that's going to take also very long time, yeah? So I think I understand that now you are very focused on what you are doing, but could be a very good recommendation to just think also the impact in the real world. So just a recommendation.
Thank you. Yeah, we're trying to work with other standards bodies, cooperate with them, and so forth. And we are trying to be aware of how these will fit into bigger protocols, and we want submitters to think about that as well. So yes. Is there a question over here?
Hi. So, yeah, it's a question which is somehow linked to some of the previous questions. But, so yeah, with the present research on the functionality, it becomes clear that, for example, we cannot have chosen ciphertext resistance on one side and fully homomorphic at the same time. But in practice, both would be important. So is there a plan to standardize also fully homomorphic schemes or primitives for searchable encryption?
I don't think that should be a priority over some more basic functionality. That's my opinion. I don't think we would disqualify it, of course. You understand what I'm saying? We have other things to consider, I think. This is what I'm saying.
Okay, makes sense.
There was a NESI effort about 15 years ago to collect a bunch of systems, including public key encryption, public key signatures, and it didn't have like indistinguishability obfuscation, fully homomorphic encryption, and so on. It was focused on the basics, but it still seemed too broadly spread, and it ended up with some pretty unsatisfactory selections for basically all of the different kinds of primitives they were looking at. Do you have a plan for avoiding that kind of lack of focus? Somehow AES and SHA-3, those were competitions where everybody was very focused on one thing, and that seems to have worked out reasonably well. But aren't you worried that in a few years, when you're calling for several different kinds of primitives, that you're going to have people, you know, stateful signatures, stateless signatures, public key encryption, even if it's just those three, isn't that going to spread out effort too much?
Yeah, I think that's actually a possibility. I think that's a realistic criticism of what we've put forth so far, so we need to work on that. I think another issue between the process, the NESI process back in, when was that? It was 2003? I think roughly then. I mean, maybe I'm optimistic, but I do think that we've matured a great deal in our science since then. So I mean, that may be a little bit of an effect as well. But yeah, I think it's something we have to address as the process goes on, and we need to refine our this is like a first draft. This is asking for comments and help from the community, right, and how to organize this process. So it's something we need to think about to refine our ideas about what we're doing.
Okay, I'm Sasaki from National Institute of Information Technology, Tokyo. I have two questions. One is, when do you expect quantum computer be realistic? And I am a physicist and working on the quantum technologies, and we really feel hard to scalable quantum computing. But for example, Michele Mosca predicts that it could become maybe in 16 years. But I would like to know the NIST idea, NIST understanding of when quantum computer could be possible.
So I don't think our opinion on when it comes is as important as the opinions of other people who know better than us. But I think a more interesting question is, when will we find out that the NSA has had a quantum computer for 20 years?
Okay. And my second question is that, in my understanding, there are two main institutions who take an initiative of standardization of PQCrypto. One is you. The other is ETSI, Quantum Safe Crypto Workshop. And what is the relation? Are you communicating with each other in the same direction, or you are working separately?
We have communicated with them. We've met with them a few times over the past few months. We've contributed to some of the documents that they've written, so we are collaborating with them. I think their direction is slightly different than what ours is. They're looking to come up with primitives that industry can use, and letting industry pick for themselves. We're looking to select specific ones, a small number. So there's a little difference there, but we are certainly talking with them.
Okay. And my last suggestion, in US, the company Battelle are now constructing a big continental scale QKD network. And I think IDQ, it's a venture company, is now working behind, and they have almost standardized QKD systems. And I think it's time to standardize the QKD technologies. And if you have a chance, please consider some, startup kind of a working group in NIST as well.
Since the panel is quite quiet, as a cryptographer, let me take the hit here. I do not see a need to standardize QKD because I do not see any real-world application for QKD. I do not think that there is any area where it would provide more security than normal cryptography. And there are some areas where it is just significantly less developed, where all the implementations get broken by side channel analysis, which we have much better under control for normal cryptography than it's currently the state for quantum cryptography or QKD. So I would recommend not to standardize QKD.
I think that just is outside of our consideration. That's just a different thing and doesn't address the problems that we are wanting to address. That's how I view it. That's the nicer way of saying it.
Hi. I have a couple of questions from the internet, and they're not cryptographers, I think. But and I have a couple questions myself. So the first thing I wondered if you could just say it on the record because you said it beforehand about your status about having clearances and whether or not you're allowed to read the Snowden documents, because you told me earlier that you didn't have them and you weren't allowed to, and I wonder if you could just clarify to everyone that that means you don't know the contents of those documents.
Yeah, I myself, I have not read them. We don't have clearances at NIST. There are, I think, a few people who do. And as I understand it, I could be wrong, but we're not supposed to read classified material as government employees when we don't have a clearance. So that's as I understand it.
And okay, so that's a great setup for the next several questions. Given the fact that we learned many things, for example, about cryptographic exploitation solutions, ability to solve, for example, discrete log or factor certain things, how will you guys be able to advise us when the cutting edge cryptographic breakthroughs that have been released that are classified documents are not things you're allowed to see? How will you learn those facts in order to keep us safe?
Yeah, I would say the same thing. We're not relying on our own expertise to do all this. We need the help of everyone else, and we value your input. So, yeah, we hope to hear it from other people, the things that are important.
Will NIST call for a full congressional inquiry into the NSA's Bull Run program, which is the program to sabotage all the cryptography for the world?
It's above my pay grade.
I'm going to guess no.
So what kind of accountability will NIST provide for the past before we talk about the future? I'm sorry to be so direct. I know it's not the Asian cultural way, but I'm not.
We had I forget the name. We had it was called the VCAD. We had a review board come, and we were fully open and transparent with them and discussed everything that they wanted to know and asked, and we posted that all on the web. Hopefully that was useful. They made some recommendations for how we can do things better. So I would start there and look at all that material.
So Doug Huff and Zaki Manan ask from the internet, how does NIST expect us to trust them on future cryptographic standards without an apology and I'm mixing their two questions together, without an apology as well as a full accounting on dual EC, like presentations about dual EC, how the backdoor worked, how they were tricked, how NSA sort of sabotaged the process? Like, has NIST ever presented an hour-long presentation about all of this very openly?
Yeah, that's what I was just talking about. We to that review board, and it's public. You can go on there and read it all about it. It was closer to 2-hour presentation on and answered all their questions that we had. John Kelsey was involved with it. I believe he was at Crypto a year or two ago and publicly said, "I'm sorry this got through." So
He also talked a little bit about what happened.
Yeah.
For the people that are watching the video that didn't know that, that's why I'm asking this question for those people. Are you guys sorry?
Yes.
Okay, great. So with that in mind, what countermeasures are, this is from Ivan Q, so something.
Can I stop you for just a second before that?
Yep.
Like, so if something happened, which is not clear to us, but it's very clear to you, right? It's very clear to you.
It was clear to the NSA when the Bull Run program. 2,000 people are read into the sabotage program.
So whenever we fail in something, then we should be embarrassed for it, right? Do you agree?
No, I think you should take corrective action to ensure that it doesn't repeat.
Of course, yes, that as well. Yeah.
So what are the corrective actions that will concretely be taken?
What we were talking about with this board and the recommendations of whatever that group was. What was it?
The VCAT.
Yeah. The VCAT, yeah, whatever. Yeah.
So if you go to our webpage online, all that material is there for everyone to see.
So then, will you support a full congressional inquiry? Can you get NIST to do that so that we can have real answers? Since you obviously can't know what the NSA does, but Congress can.
I think, as far as I know, that's outside of what us three can't do anything in that regard.
I don't think it's NIST's place to lobby Congress.
Actually, yeah, I don't think it's NIST's place. Yeah, we don't give orders to Congress.
You just follow the orders. Okay, gotcha.
Hi, I was one of the people commenting on your document. I'm trying to find the number, and I just failed to by search engines, by the internet. You had this report on like the meta document, how to make new standards, and there were like several versions that people could comment on, and the latest version had a huge explanation at the beginning, like what this means. And when Dustin, when you gave the presentation at the beginning, your slides were saying that you would publish all the comments, but your words were saying that you hope you can publish all the comments. So what is the actual final document on this, and what is going to be the procedure?
I believe we can publish all the comments. That's since a year or two ago, every time we have a document go out for public comment, we've been making it clear that we will be publishing everything that people send in to us. So I believe that's our current status, yes.
All right, but are you getting information from other channels?
When we are getting information from any channel, we tell them that we are going to publish it. So we let everyone who knows.
Because, I mean, in the past, you have been kind of cleaning up the things before they went online. There were some emails which were not going online for the dual EC story.
Not completely sure what you're meaning. If it was several years ago.
Sure, I mean, it was before your time, I know that.
Yeah. So.
It's just that when you ask NIST directly, you get a different document than what the PDF is that's online, and there's some emails missing where some affiliations are interesting.
I don't know. Yeah. Dan?
Different topic, algorithm selection. Stephen was mentioning yesterday that there's all sorts of current work on NTRU and ring LWE, and that makes it unsuitable for standardization. What do you think?
I mean, so it's our previous position during the hash function competition was that a lot of cryptanalysis was a good thing as long as it did not actually reduce the security level of the thing in question. You know, so they break some number of rounds and it doesn't look like it's asymptoting up to the full number of rounds. That's generally a good thing. It means people are looking at it.
But how do you recognize cases where there's a new technique which is going to be breaking a whole lot more? Like, you know, message modification suddenly springs on the scene for hash functions and suddenly breaks a whole lot of stuff. How do you evaluate algorithms and see whether you're in that situation?
Well, that's where we have to actually look at the papers. So, you know, I mean, counting papers is one thing. Looking at them tells you more. I mean, it's. Either of you have more comments on?
Would you also consider algorithms that have been around for a long time? So I'm thinking here about Macaulay's Niederreiter with binary Gopher code. So I expect the original authors will not hand in a proposal. So will you expect that someone else takes credit for this and hands in a proposal for this? Or, I mean, the algorithm is known and the binary Gopher codes are known for a long time. So there will not be a kind of new proposal for this. So will you take this as it's already known so we can standardize, or does someone have to take the action and propose it again to you?
We would hope someone would be able to place a proposal for that. It should be out of patent, so pretty much anyone ought to be able to do it. So there are other things in the proposal, documentation of best known attacks, padding schemes and the like, that you know, would be informative to us.
Question from the industry perspective. When you're standardizing parameter sets, how much are you going to balance security versus speed and memory footprint on the issuing side, on the verification side, on the encryption side, decryption side?
Well, I would expect the submitters to say what parameters they're suggesting for the security levels we request.
Yeah, we're wanting concrete parameters submitted. We don't want to have to guess ourselves what the parameters should be.
Yeah, my question is, we're still concerned the strategy you will take, because in the future we will face many different levels of security requirements, right? Personally or national infrastructure. So what you suggest is, should we use like the first generation of the public key encryption? We use the one body to take care every layer of security requirements, or for instance, in the second generation, we take the lower security requirement for the, say, the personally or other stuff, and higher security for the national security. So what is a strategy to select that?
Well, we don't set the national security algorithms. We don't pick those. We standardize algorithms, and then the NSA might say, let's create a suite of algorithms, and they might select some, but we don't tell them what to pick. So
the strength of the personal use will be equivalent to the strength of the, let's say, the bank use, right? What do you suggest there?
Well, generally, as I believe we've done in the past, is we've standardized things and said this is at the 128-bit security level, this is at the 256-bit security level. We haven't said is this for personal use or industry use. The user can determine if that security level is appropriate for them.
Yeah, because in the future we're still concerned about the, let's say, the smart devices or the end point of devices. Maybe they will require lower security but higher efficiency. So we deal with the different parameters in different situations. So.
Yeah. We're going to suggest parameters we think are secure. But,
let's go to Dan first.
Okay, so on a related note, for evaluating the security levels, you were mentioning that post-quantum you're aiming for security levels of 2 to the 64 up through 2 to the 128 with 5 levels in between, I think. I mean, total of 5 levels. Something that's striking about the AES presentation from a couple days ago and the hashing presentation from today is that there's a really serious overhead for the individual operations in quantum attacks, like a 2 to the 30 kind of overhead on, say, a 2 to the 64 or 2 to the whatever Grover kind of attack, which means that the analysis of, and these are detailed, complicated analyses, the analysis of security levels is actually pretty sophisticated and has some really big constant factors. are you sure it makes sense within a year to be asking people to pin down what the security levels are? Because we can't ignore factors of 2 to the 30. I mean, that's a gigantic factor to deal with. And if we aren't dealing with this factor, then what sense does it make to be looking at concrete security levels like 2 to the 64, 2 to the 80?
So I would say that 2 to the 64 in this case means whatever it takes to break AES 128. So those 2 to the 30 factors should be in any other comparable quantum algorithm you would expect.
But it doesn't seem that simple looking more at the details that there was a factor of 10 difference, for example, between the SHA-256 and Shake-256 numbers today. And as people look more and more at different algorithms with different levels of reversibility, different levels of parallelization, which is a serious issue for quantum algorithms, then they're going to find more and more of these differences. That the 2 to the 30 is sort of what we've been seeing for a few examples. It's roughly on that scale. But if it's actually 2 to the 40 for some things and 2 to the 20 for others, we're just at the beginning of understanding these post-quantum security levels. And if you're saying, well, things should be comparable to AES, is there actually going to be a focused analysis of the AES security level to compare things to? And are submitters going to have to do that kind of analysis for their algorithms to figure out what security level they're targeting? Also, is it reasonable to say that this is how NIST actually chooses its security levels, given, say, RSA 2048, which everybody knows was chosen as a power of 2 key size and not as aiming for some 2 to the 112 plus or minus epsilon security level?
So, I mean, we're gonna. It's very hard for us to ask for round numbers in your parameters. It's much easier to ask for concrete security levels. And my advice to submitters is that if you have difficulty estimating what your security is, suggest parameters on the conservative side so you're comfortable that you're above the security level we're asking for.
So with previous contests, I mean, run by, NIST, you ask for candidates, and during some part of the contest, the submitters could make small tweaks to the parameters and even the scheme. Now, I mean, you say that this is not really a contest. You are not selecting one scheme, blah blah. Okay, but I mean, so do the submitters get to make tweaks later? I mean.
I don't think this is something we have built into our timeline yet, but I think that it should be. I can't say 100% for sure, but I think it's something that's going to be put into our timeline to let submitters know.
Of whether QKD is something you'd be interested in. There are these security models where you have fully quantum interactions with an adversary, and some things might not be secure if you actually run them on a quantum computer. Can we get some assurance that we're actually only interested in cryptography that runs on classical computers? Like the security definitions that you'll propose are actually with classical interactions with an adversary and not with fully quantum models?
Well, yeah, that is what we were thinking. Obviously, if you're doing a random oracle proof, you're going to want to think of that as a quantum random oracle. But again, we're not requiring proofs. If someone wants to prove their security in a more advanced model than we're asking for, we will consider that. But I don't think we're going to require it.
I have 3 questions from the internet. Does NIST plan to revoke, or do you revoke FIPS certifications for cryptographic modules in which vulnerabilities or backdoors are discovered? Or are you going to keep certified devices certified even if they are known to be no longer compliant? That's the first question.
Yes, that's a CMVP question, which I don't know. Who,
NIST, but we're
yeah,
not
yeah.
in
Who's
it,
a good?
so-
Do you know who's a good person to contact for
Sharon
that?
Keller.
Yeah, yeah.
Great. Okay. And Doug Huff asks, does NIST believe that NSA's derecommendation of EC is FUD, or fear, uncertainty, and doubt, to make RSA more prevalent? Does NIST believe NSA is hiding advances against RSA or EC? What's the idea behind that? Could you clarify that? That's the second question.
We don't know NSA's motivations because we're not them and we can't speak for them. We still believe using the NIST curves and ECC is safe and will be for a time. We had a little bit longer discussion at the past ECC. I'm not sure if there's video, but there's notes from that are online as well. But yeah, I can't speak for the NSA, but NIST still believes in the security of ECC.
And then the final question is, will NIST be hiring additional people proportionate to the known published bull run budget for sabotage in order to specifically check for backdoors and sabotage so that we can know that NSA isn't playing NIST? In other words, is that response happening? Are you going to hire half the people in this room?
I hope so. Now provide us money. I would be happy to, yes.
And we do have money to hire people if people are interested in coming to NIST. So.
But specifically to look for backdoors and sabotage is the question.
This also should be, it also should be part of the responsibility of the international community for this, because we are all doing this together. Does it make sense?
No, because of
No.
the sabotage. I mean, I agree that we should all do it together, but as an American, what NIST has done has shamed our country. And the international community needs America to make up for the shame that the NSA and NIST have brought. And we have a responsibility to repair our reputation internationally. And it's not your fault, obviously, but it is clearly our responsibility to fix it, and also the NSA's. So the question is, how do we actually catch these guys again? Because they're still doing it right now to half the people in the room. Actually, all of us.
We are responsible to repair reputation. I agree with you on this. What we can do depends on our resources and how we communicate with everybody. And that's hard. It's just not something that's so obvious, I think.
So would NIST take funding from the Chinese government to investigate NSA sabotage?
That's a great idea.
Fantastic.
Convince them to give us money for this, yes.
I'd like to come back to the round sizes for a moment. If something like RSA is submitted, I mean not RSA obviously, but something post-quantum that looks like RSA with key sizes of 1K, 2K, 4K, and then the people submitting say, well, here's our current security analysis, and it looks like they're giving certain security levels, but that's not the point. The point is it fits into certain sizes, and that's what the applications need. What's wrong with that as a submission? Why shouldn't people be allowed to submit things which are aimed at being able to fit into applications so they can actually be deployed, and then the security looks okay? I mean, people will say, everybody's going to be having this trouble figuring out what the security levels exactly are post-quantum. And then what's wrong with a submission like this that says, yeah, we've got that uncertainty, but at least we know what the performance is, and we know this fits into certain applications.
So yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with that as a submission. And you know, round number parameters. You know, if you're confident the security level is above 64 bits post quantum, submit it for that. If you're confident it's above 80, you know, put it for that. You know, you can submit the same thing for both levels if you'd like. We would like you to report, you know, more detailed estimates if you have them. But yeah, I mean, I think we would want to leave that much leeway to submitters to allow them to do that.
So if somebody does a bit of overkill and something's more secure, like your list of security levels stopped at 2 to the 128, if somebody has something which is actually 2 to the 144 security, then you're not going to throw it away because it's more secure, because it's overkill, right?
No.
Okay, thanks.
In the announcement, you were saying that you're looking for 3 categories: encryption, key exchange, and signatures. In the presentation was definitely encryption, definitely signatures, maybe key exchange. Are you also looking for hybrid modes? So a different level, we don't care what primitive is, but we want to have like a recommendation of how we combine 2 encryption schemes or 2 signature schemes, in particular for people in the transition phase, or in particular for people, well, what Dan was pointing out as a scenario like who are dealing with auditors.
Well, the main reason we're asking for those again is to replace the standards that we currently have, so signatures and key establishment. So that's what we're focusing on. It doesn't have to be encryption and key exchange. If you can provide, use encryption to get your key transport, that's fine. Yes.
I mean, it's a follow-up question. We have this initial recommendations from the PQCrypto project, and I'm very happy with proposing those post-quantum systems as standalone. However, I see a demand by practitioners, by the internet, by, well, people I talk to please provide something which definitely guaranteed is no less secure than what we have right now. I think I can write it up, it's not a problem, and most likely we're going to put out something with PQCrypto pretty soon anyway. I'm just thinking, if you haven't thought about it yet, how about you consider making this service also for practitioners with the NIST stamp of approval, saying, hey, this is how we would combine those.
I'm sorry, could you say again, because I didn't hear the last part.
Like, if we say this as a project, we say this as scientists, it's a different level from the NIST seal of approval, saying, hey, this is how we would consider a good hybrid scheme, which might be totally the same that we come up with. And hey, I'm arrogant enough to think it might be the same. It might be even that we propose this, but would you actually be interested in such proposals?
I think so. We've been hearing feedback here that people are interested in that, so yeah.
Yeah, maybe is your question how much we will consider them? I mean, I don't think we'll be offended if people send us good ideas.
You mean I should send you emails? Sounds great. It's more you have a call for, well, it looks like you're going to have a call for 3 kinds of primitives. And when I submit a primitive, I want to have the primitive which is just post-quantum.
So you're asking for consideration, like is it?
Would you also like to have a call open for this, or would you say, hey, in the making of this, already put this in the call text, when is the right moment to point this out?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I think it's something we need to consider, because I don't think that's unreasonable for us to explicitly state to what extent we're interested in this, and how much consideration we would give to this specifically as a suggestion. Yeah, we need to think about that, I think. Dan, since he's okay.
The dark side of this, if you don't make clear in advance what you're looking for, there will be people who do submissions where they say, yeah, we've got the following combination of ring LWE, whatever, and some elliptic curves or whatever. They're going to take some combination and say, this has reasonable performance properties and it's better than all those other proposals because it includes the pre-quantum stuff. You can verify signatures independently. You get this guarantee that it's as secure as what we have now. And then anybody else who sees this coming is going to say, ooh, wait, I should submit 6 different versions of my proposal where they're combined, like my post-quantum proposal is going to be combined with 5 different pre-quantum systems, or like every possible existing NIST standard for pre-quantum. And then you're going to be flooded with submissions where people are saying, yeah, I've got this combination, that combination. Probably you don't want to be reviewing all those. You just want to be looking at the post-quantum parts. But then if you just want to look at the post-quantum parts, then you have to clearly tell people, look, we just want the post-quantum parts. If you do want to have combinations submitted, then you have to visualize what that's actually going to mean.
Thanks. It's a good suggestion. Thanks.
I think there's a question down here.
following up on Dan's question, again, it's Ilimirinov from Google. I think it's a given that the early implementations of post-quantum crypto will come in a hybrid mode. No one is going to put all their eggs in the post-quantum basket for now. So I think the evaluation of post-quantum proposals should be done with the understanding that they are going to be deployed alongside classical crypto. And in practical terms, it means that ultra-fast computation times, which are possible with lattices, are probably not that interesting if they're going to be used in parallel with elliptic curves or legacy public key crypto. And I think this should be a priority in evaluation of your proposals, at least in the midterm horizon, 10 years out.
Thank you.
Practical questions. Are you going to have limits on the number of proposals a person can submit?
We haven't talked about that. So I don't think so. But
don't see why. It should take them longer to write it than it takes us to read it. We'd hope.
Well, copy and paste. I don't know.
There are these auto paper generators, but anyway. I mean, I'm very happy about the answer because we have a few groups in the world who are working on those. Of course, we can say, hey, okay, each of our students has to take one of the proposals and run with it, but it's also a little strange. But in past things which were labeled as competitions, there were limits. And this comes in with several of the questions. I mean, Boyin asking whether there's a way of updating while you had said you could do a new proposal. I mean, if there's a limit, then I really need to update. If there's no limit, I can just submit as new a tweak if you don't allow tweaks otherwise. So I understand this is very early and just put this document out and was just like, have you thought about yes, no, apparently no.
I don't think we've thought about that, actually, yeah. I think you're right. I think it also depends on how much money we get from China to review all these.
Okay, Chinese, please send them money.
Hey, me again, sorry. Other than dual EC, are there any other NIST standards that are under suspicion as potentially being sabotaged or backdoored? And when that does happen, if it isn't already happening, what is the process by which the community can be notified so that we can help with analysis?
Well, as soon as we know anything, we publicly go out and talk about it. As soon as there was any suspicion about, well, maybe not as soon as any suspicion, but as soon as we were aware there was a bigger problem with dual EC, we went to several workshops. We posted it on our website. We recommended people stop using it. So we try and be as vocal about it as we can to let people know. I forget the other part of your question which you asked.
Are there any other standards that NIST has which are thought to be sabotaged or weak or in any way not actually up to snuff right now that are being thought of in that way?
Not
I'm sure you can find somebody on the internet.
Yeah, not to my knowledge.
Yeah, right. So,
no, I mean, I've read a lot. I mean, I've read documents about, like, you know, for example, Simon and Spec being, you know, very small key sizes. Does that count as sabotage? Probably not, right? Because it has a very scoped use. But the question is there anything you guys suspect right now that we need to know about?
Not to my knowledge.
Yeah,
I think if there was,
certainly not among our standards. Yeah.
We would have said it already.
Okay.
Yeah. Simon's spec, by the way, are not our standards.
And they won't become your standards?
I mean,
we have a lightweight crypto group that's working on lightweight stuff, and so depending on that, but it currently is not at the moment, no.
Would it receive extra priority and scrutiny given the history of the organization that it submits it?
Yeah, probably, yeah.
And we'd want the community especially to take a detailed look.
Great, thank you.
kind of looking in the audience for Chris Guy, but since he's not asking it, now he's turning around. Hi, Chris. How about hardware implementations? I understand Chris is currently busy with CISA, so he doesn't want to do it. Do you purely call for software? I mean, from the presentations, you're calling for software submissions, reference implementations, benchmarking, and so on. Are you going to consider in this round, in a later round, benefits for hardware, FPGA, ASICs?
I think so, yes. I mean, we did it the last time, and I don't see why we wouldn't do it this time.
How do you get the code?
How do we get the code? Well, I mean, so I don't know. I mean, we didn't specifically ask in the submission package for hardware implementations, but I mean, submitters are welcome to provide those, or anyone else for that matter.
Okay, so you're happy with second-party,
yeah,
third-party implementations. You're not requesting that the submitters also prepare a hardware implementation.
Yeah, I don't see this as being likely to be any different from how we did it the last time.
Okay.
So for these public key crypto systems, you normally have, especially for the post-quantum ones, a bunch of parameters that allow you to tweak parameters for speed, for size, for security. I mean, you've got a lot of trade-offs. Do you give some guidelines, like requirements that say, okay, your parameters should be balanced, there should be parameter sets for one or for the other, something like this? Because like, thinking about the hash-based standard, like in the beginning we had something like 60 different parameter choices for every kind of option, and at some point we boiled it down to an average case. But I think, I'm not sure actually if this is what industry wants. And do you have some feedback for this?
Well, I mean, so submitters are supposed to set parameters, not us. That's so.
Yeah, but with which requirements? Like small sizes. I mean, there was this comment. Okay, if we combine it with ECC anyway, then we do not have to be faster than ECC. I mean, do you collect stuff like this as guidelines, like how the parameters should be balanced? Because otherwise it will be hard to compare stuff. Then you get things that have small sizes but incredibly slow, or...
Well, so first of all, we may standardize more than one thing for different applications. So it may be the case that one algorithm is very good in hardware and another is very good in software, and we'll standardize both. And so, yeah, it's going to be, yeah.
That's a tough question, yeah.
But yeah, we will take comments from industry about what their needs are and so on.
Did you consider to make perhaps a special call for industry, like to submit requirements? Or, I mean, I tried once to collect requirements for signatures and talked just to a few industries, and it's a pain. It's like, yeah, it shouldn't be slower than what we got now, and it shouldn't be bigger than what we got now. But if you tell them, like, okay, it will be less performant in some sense, what would you prefer? I mean, for researchers, it's, I think, harder to get by these requirements than for NIST, for example.
So you said you've asked this. What was the reply?
So at that point, I just asked if they have requirements, and it was simply like, at best, better than what we got now, but in no case less performant in any sense. Yeah, that's kind of useless.
Well, it looks like our time is up, so if there's any last questions.
You can continue questions with email and such things from our contact information. We'll be open and talk to you.
All right. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate your questions, your feedback.
Thank you.